I'm Eric Bricker, and I've been a psychotherapist for over 25 years. One thing I can tell you for certain is that no one makes it through life unscathed. At some point, many of us will rely on the trusted counsel of another person to help us navigate difficult times, or to reconcile a troubled past. Whether conventional or unconventional, professional or informal, there are a lot of different forms that helping relationships can take. This podcast is an exploration into what makes these relationships work. Who are the people that help us? How do they help us? What do people need help with? My hope is to uncover as much as I can about this very human phenomenon, and I hope that you'll join me. This is the Good Counsel Podcast. The following is audio that was taken from a video that was produced by the FBI for the sake of educating the public on the crisis of human trafficking that is currently at epidemic levels in the Bucks County area in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The individual featured in the story is Alison Vanhorn, and she is my guest today on the Good Counsel Podcast.
I think when I was first, on the streets, I still kind of separated myself from everybody else that was down there and looked at myself as unique, that I'm not as bad off as these people. I'm not as dirty as these people. I haven't, done certain things yet. I haven't been arrested yet. I'll be fine.
Kensington Avenue runs under an elevated train. They call it the L. So it's kind of like a hallway almost, where it's the stores and then there's the train platform. So there's no sunlight, there's nothing like that. It's inner city. There's trash, there's everything you could think of. It's abandoned buildings, abandoned factories, abandoned houses. And then there's the heroin. And there's on every street corner down there, there's dealers. You can't go anywhere without running into dealers.
That went from trying it, probably to within a month, needing to do it every single day. So when I moved down there, it was very bad. It wasn't about the thrill of getting high. It was I need this, or I feel like I'm going to die because I'm getting that sick.
That's one of the tools that the pimps use to keep these girls under control and keep them in the working status, because they need the drugs. They need the money to get the drugs. So that's a big key factor in their control over these girls.
In the beginning, it's easy for them to manipulate you when you have nothing, and they're literally providing you with everything. And they have that control over you. It kind of became just giving in to them, because I felt obligated, to do certain things with them in order for them to keep providing for me. If they would be physically abusive towards you, then they would remind you that they were your primary source of income, your primary, place to have a roof over your head, to feed you. So even though that part of it was there, it's kind of you were willing to sacrifice. I was willing to sacrifice enduring that, because without that person, I thought I had nothing.
We ran into her and she didn't fit. She didn't belong. She was clean. That's a big thing. And she was dressed nice. And that didn't fit. And then after we talked to her, she was educated. It all didn't jive.
He probably first met me when I had just gotten out there. And I wasn't, as bad off or as beaten up as I was, years later, when he found me again.
And the second time, it's all right, you're back down here. What's going on? And the progression started where she just kept getting worse and worse and worse and deeper into Kensington, where she couldn't get out.
It's honestly like a war zone is how I would describe Kensington. I normalized it so much, but most of what goes on there is, drugs, prostitution, and violence. It's crazy when I think about it now, because it's no way for a person to live.
Finally, at some point, her mom actually reached out to me and wanted me to, see if I could find her. They wanted to get her help and get her off the street and out of what she was doing and where she was.
I had alienated myself from them for so long, lied to them, stole from them, had them searching for me for months, putting out missing persons reports for me. There had been warrants out for my arrest because I had failed to appear in court for months, like I was running from the police. And Detective Johnson was on the warrant unit at that time. I remember I was walking down a one-way street this way and I see a truck go this way. And for a split second, I thought about running. He got out of the car and he handcuffed me. And he literally called my mom on the phone to say, like, we found your daughter. So that day that he arrested me, it's kind of like I had that moment of clarity where I realized that I was going to be in trouble because I was going to be in jail. But I also had that sense of relief that was a little scary because I knew that it was over. I knew that the way that I was living and, you know, my days on the streets and years of living that way was ending. So as scared as I was, it was almost relieving in a sense to know, like, even if this is forced, like, my life doesn't have to be like this anymore. Looking back, like, that day, he saved my life in the sense that had he not gotten me then, like, I don't think that I would have made it off of the streets alive had I continued to stay out there.
I don't look at it like that. Like I saved her life. I mean, now sitting back after she said it, yeah, but that's what I was supposed to do. That was my job. That's what the task force, everybody was here to do. That's what we're supposed to do, is help these girls get off the street.
Whether it's, you know, addiction or prostitution or human trafficking, it doesn't discriminate against any, you know, socioeconomic status or any background. Even me in the beginning thought, like, you know, I come from a good family, an educated family, a good area. Like, this could never happen to me. Like, I was one of those naive, ignorant people that didn't think it could happen to me, as though I was above other people. But it can happen to anybody. You don't have to come from, you know, a bad home or live in the inner city where that stuff might be misconceived as being more prevalent. Like, it happens everywhere. It can happen to anybody.
I'm Eric Bricker, and this is the Good Counsel Podcast. Alison, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out and being willing to do this today. We're going to be tackling a pretty heavy subject.
Yeah.
Allie, it has been 6 years since this video was recorded. It was recorded back in 2018. What is it like for you to listen to that today?
So to listen to that today brings up a lot of emotions, mixed emotions, right? Where part of it has me connecting with sadness or shame of what my life used to be like, but also that feeling of relief, empowerment in terms of looking at where I've grown to today. So it's almost like listening to or hearing the story of somebody else, but in the way that I've overcome a lot since then.
So the period of your life that is featured in the video, the story that you're actually telling, was from 2014.
Correct.
It is currently 2024. Your life is not even a reflection or shadow of the person that you were at that time.
Right.
You are the clinical supervisor at a very well-respected substance use disorder and mental health treatment facility. You have a burgeoning career. You're kind of in your prime.
Mm-hmm.
You are a newlywed, just recently married. I see all of the pictures on social media of you and Michael Cardinal running around and doing great things. You are surrounded by loving family and this really great friend group that you have. You look like a happy, joyous person in the prime of her life.
For sure. Yeah.
It's in a way almost difficult to attach the person that I know you to be today to the images that are captured in that video.
I experience the same, where I know that is me, was me. And sometimes it feels like I'm telling the story of someone else because it was day and night difference of what my life used to be like compared to what it's grown to today.
So I guess to me, the question is, how does one go from the person that we saw in the video to the person that you have become today? How does that happen? Because there are a lot of people out there in the world who are in those circumstances that were depicted in the video. It's a huge problem.
Right.
And not everybody has your outcome. In fact, I would say that your situation, your outcome, is really the ideal and very rare.
For sure. When you ask like how that happened, it's first thoughts that come to my mind is the ability of my family, law enforcement, victim advocates, really taking an interest in helping me get out of that lifestyle. So when I think about the how, I think about the who, right? The number of people that utilize their time, their resources, their energy to working together to help get me out of a really devastating lifestyle and taking an interest in viewing me as a person with a life worth living, right? So it was the help of so many people and treatment opportunities that really helped get me out and helped me change my life around.
The officer depicted in the video is Deputy Sheriff William Johnson of the Philadelphia Sheriff's Office. He is also a member of the FBI's Violent Crimes Against Children Task Force. What do you want to say about him?
So when I think about Detective Johnson, he saved my life. In my eyes, he saved my life. When I first met Detective Johnson was when I was on the streets involved in addiction, prostitution. And when I first met him was in the capacity that he was a warrant unit officer. That's how I knew him. When I look back to his ability to help rescue me and get me out of that lifestyle, I look at him as a professional in law enforcement who did everything he could to help me and my family. So I look at him as an individual who saved my life.
When's the last time you talked to him?
The last time I talked to Detective Johnson was probably around 2020. And I still keep in touch with him over the years in small capacities with filling him in on how I'm doing, how my family is doing. I almost feel that obligation to the person that helped save my life to share with them the good things that have been going on over the past couple of years.
This is a quote actually from the FBI website. Although Johnson says he was just doing his job, Allie credits him with saving her from a life of addiction, prostitution, and being on the streets, a life she believes that would not have lasted much longer. Powerful statement.
Yeah.
And clearly your experience of that, your opinion about it, your thoughts of that have not changed.
They have not.
That video that you shot, that was part of involvement that you had, particularly in 2018, where you were engaging with these promotional efforts on the part of the Bucks Coalition Against Human Trafficking, who specifically are targeting the huge human trafficking issue in the Bucks County area of Philadelphia, where this is an epidemic issue. There are women like you in very similar circumstances that are suffering and dying on the streets of Kensington, Pennsylvania on a daily basis.
Right.
That same year, the Bucks Coalition Against Human Trafficking hosted a professional conference, the Human Trafficking, Creating Awareness and Taking Action in Bucks County. This was attended by over 160 people, many of whom were law enforcement, social workers, and other people, policymakers who were all coming together to talk about this important issue.
Right.
It was the first such gathering on this level to ever take place. The Bucks County Coalition had been around since 2013. This big event that was taking place at Delaware Valley University was 2018, the same year that you shot the video.
Right.
For the FBI. Big event, a lot of people present. You were the keynote speaker.
Right.
At that. I am wondering, what was it like to get up in front of 160 law enforcement officers, social workers, all these different people, and to be the featured guest to share your story? What was that like for you?
So I remember when I was first approached about being a keynote speaker, and my brain told me, who are you to be in a position to be educating, other professionals? So where I was honored to be asked to do that, I felt initially anxious and insecure of why me, right? What can I possibly say to educate people that have been trying to tackle this epidemic for years? So when I was first speaking, I had then gotten myself into the professional field and industry that I'm in now. So when I spoke, it was less of a professional and more as an individual, or sharing my story of being a victim of addiction and human trafficking. So it was nerve-wracking to be in a room full of 160 plus people, but the fact that these individuals wanted to hear from me what I had experienced, so that they could collectively work better to improve the system and the outreach of helping women like me, was an honor to do.
Here's a quote from you that I found in a newsletter that was describing what had happened that day. And this was put out by the Advocacy Committee. Quote, "I spent years running from the very people who are in this room today. Today, I am on the other side of it with the help from people like you, and I am forever grateful." I have to imagine that having a person like you get up on stage in front of all of these law enforcement people and social workers who really are dedicating all of their time and their work to trying to help women get out of this circumstance, it was probably very powerful for them to hear you talking about that, to hear you talk about your gratitude, to see the kind of life that you were living in 2018 versus the life that you were living in 2014.
For sure. Their interest in not only wanting to hear, my story and my experience, but point of them wanting to do that is to look at what could they do better, I think is what they said to me, right? How can we be more educated by somebody who's lived that experience so that we can better help people that are still out there suffering?
It sounds like from the research that I did that the coalition and other advocacy groups are still very active in that area.
For sure.
And I think there's even a report in some reduction in those activities in the area. But at the same time, it's still a pretty big problem. In July of this year, the anti-trafficking group Exodus Road hosted an event in Kensington. One of the organizers states, "You have folks suffering with addiction. They are easily manipulated. Before you know it, they are being trafficked and wondering, how did I get here?"
That rings true to my experience in every way.
Can you describe a little bit about how you do get there? How does that happen?
Sure. So when I reflect back on, how did I get there? How did that happen to me? How was that? Is that my story? My personal experience was me falling into the depths of a pretty significant substance use addiction. As that progressed over the years, and I kind of discovered this world of Kensington, Philadelphia, right? This world that initially seemed thrilling, right? It had access to everything that somebody who is facing addiction would want. When I kind of discovered that part of the city. In the beginning, it was thrilling to me, right? It was, I can do whatever I need to do to feed my addiction on the streets out there. I think when I first went to Kensington, I was naive to the fact of the level of gangs, the level of prostitution rings, the level of people that were grooming on, vulnerable individuals like myself. I didn't go out there looking at myself as somebody who was vulnerable because of addiction. And I was blind to that for years, just in terms of people that I met out there on the streets that would approach me. I was completely blind to the fact that they were grooming me, to bring me further into the depths of a lifestyle that I had no idea about.
It's a really interesting phenomenon that you described, and very much familiar when you think about working with individuals who suffer addiction. The belief that the circumstances that they're in are actually within their control, and how we can easily delude ourselves to believe that's actually where we are. And before you know it, subtly over time, you come to the realization that you have no control whatsoever. And I guess you either internalize that reality and there's some opportunity to allow others to intervene and help you, or you don't. Or you don't have the opportunity or something, or it just all gets away from you in a way that kind of overwhelms and swallows you up. And it's the life expectancy of somebody out there on those streets is not a long one.
Not at all. And Eric, when I think back to my life then, I was introduced to the streets of Kensington, Philadelphia. And by the time I got out, I was out there probably for close to 5 years. So when I think about the fact that I got off of those streets alive, it's mind-blowing to me. My ability to survive conditions that nobody should live in, right? That shouldn't be the quality of someone's life. It is mind-blowing to me. I normalized that lifestyle and somehow survived it, where there were periods that I didn't want to get off the streets. I really came to believe, that was my life. That's what it was going to be forever. So as much as I was suffering out there, it was hard for me to understand that there was a way out and that there was help.
You come from a loving home.
Yes, very much so.
You had what maybe would be described as a pretty normal upbringing.
Yes. Yeah. Came from a good family.
You came from a good family and you were educated.
Yes. Yeah.
Not the image that one generally conjures when we think about a person who is opioid dependent and in the life in a place like Kensington.
Right. I think that background, right? The home that I grew up in, or my level of educational experience, also back then helped me to kind of normalize what I was doing, because I utilized that in a sense of, this is manageable. My addiction is not that bad, because I had the degree, I had a job, came from, as you said, a good normal family. When I was out there, the individuals that I met out there did not have that. So that me sharing that is in the sense that this can happen to anybody, because it happened to me, where I think there are a lot of misconceptions around, vulnerable populations, such as people with substance abuse problems, the homeless. It doesn't just target people who come from broken homes, quote unquote, or, live or were brought up in inner cities. It can happen to anybody. And I think people forget that sometimes. I forgot that. My family was in denial of that, right? Of how could this happen to our daughter? What did we do that this has become her life? When in reality, it was not their fault.
It's interesting the way that you describe it. And as you're talking about these things, I'm thinking to myself, the very assets of coming from a loving home, being educated, and all of the different things that you had going for you in your life eventually became liabilities to you.
For sure.
Because it sounds like those became the mechanisms by which you can build the delusion of denial around.
For sure.
And you could kind of separate yourself from the things that you're doing, saying, hey, I'm still not as bad off as some of these other women out here.
Exactly. And that level of denial, right? Or the I'm okay because I have a job, or, I had at the time that my addiction got bad was like 2 years after I had graduated from graduate school with a master's degree in criminology, right? So I was able to kind of shield the depths that my addiction had gotten to with these external things, right? Of look world, I'm functioning, or look to my family, I'm okay because of all of these other things I have going on for myself. It made it really easy to hide it until it got so bad that it was obvious I was suffering.
What were your plans educationally? You had a degree in criminology. You probably had done a significant amount of study about the underworld of urban drug trafficking and human trafficking and this kind of life that you ended up living.
Yeah.
What were originally your designs and goals around that education?
Yeah. So when I got my master's degree in criminology, I remember I wrote a thesis on the reasons why women stay in abusive relationships. After I had graduated, I was working at a law firm doing similar to paralegal work. I had really had a passion to help women, that came from broken homes or came from abusive relationships, but in the sense of the legal system. So the fact that I had that passion and drive prior to me ever really experiencing, that quality of life, and then me falling to the depths of that lifestyle is kind of crazy when I say that out loud, right? So having that background and then finding myself living almost that exact lifestyle really fed my denial system even more, where I thought, that's not me. I'm not that woman who couldn't get out.
What's incredibly ironic about all of that is that you ultimately did create an opportunity to actually help women with those experiences, probably in a way that you could have never predicted was going to happen.
For sure.
But there you were in 2018, speaking to educating.
Yeah.
Really law enforcement and social workers and all of these professional people on the ins and outs of the lives of people who are subjected to these types of exploitation.
Right.
So the things that you studied in school and the intention of helping women survive these experiences, it is something you got around to.
Eventually, for sure.
Definitely not in the way that you planned.
Yeah, exactly.
But you did get there.
Yeah.
Which is interesting and kind of ironic. I wonder if that education in some way shaped the way in which you reflect back on your own experience, because you essentially are something of a subject matter expert on some of the ideas and the things that go on in the world of criminals.
Right. Yeah. In terms of looking at the barriers that people face, that I faced, to get out of that lifestyle is something, to your point, that, I was educated on, having been in school. But I think when I was in that lifestyle, I was blind to those barriers, right? I had just come to the fact of this is just what my life is going to be like. And I didn't see a way out at first.
What are the barriers?
Barriers for me to get out of that lifestyle, was really me becoming so dependent on my abusers, where they provided a roof over my head, provided me financially, gave me the things that I needed. So a lot of the barriers that I faced in terms of getting out was my belief that I would have nothing, right, if I didn't have them.
As you say that, I could see that your expression changed, and it looks like you're thinking about something, or maybe there's some feeling that came up around that.
Yeah, it's as I was talking, my brain kind of flashed back to when I was on the streets, right? Or when I was with different abusers, where they really had the ability to brainwash me in terms of that belief being true. So when I talk about it now, and I know that it's not true, it's like my brain just went back to that being a barrier, right? Of I was convinced by these people that I was really captured by, of without me you have nothing, right? Or if you try to leave, here are the things that are going to happen. And I believed that narrative that was sold.
It's amazing that that could occur. And I think for people who are unfamiliar with this dynamic, it might be hard to wrap one's mind around it.
Sure.
But the reality is that there's this sort of systemic way of operating. There's like a formula for grooming women and assimilating them into this lifestyle, and then convincing them, in a sense, that these perpetrators, these traffickers, that they care about you.
For sure. That was something that I was vulnerable to. So when I think back to when I was first on the streets due to an addiction, right? And I learned ways from other women that were out there in terms of how to make money to support my habit, and was finding myself being an individual who was essentially prostituting herself on the streets to get money. The grooming process back then, I was ignorant to. When I look back now, it's clear cut to me. The individual that I eventually, fell into trafficking by was a man who found me on the street and would drive by me, not to try to solicit me, but would stop and have me get in his car, give me money to go buy food. He didn't want anything sexually from me. He would check in on me and say, you're out here by yourself. Do you need a warm car to get into? Can I take you to a diner to get food? You can have $20, $50 for yourself, and I don't want anything in return from you. So I literally thought, this person cares about me because they're not asking me for anything in return. They're not demanding I give them anything in return. And this gentleman would find me every few days and do this for me. This went on probably for about a good year, where I owed this man nothing. And that was shocking to me, because every other person that had picked me up, right, there was an exchange of sexual behaviors for money so that I could go and get substances. So I didn't realize then that was the beginning of this person's process of grooming me that went on for a good year. I really, truly thought, like, what a kind person to see me, a homeless woman on the streets who has nothing, that is just trying to make sure I'm fed, or that I have a warm car to go into when it's snowing outside. So I was convinced that this person cared about me until about a year later, it started with, now I need you to do this, or I need you to do that. So I had no idea that was happening.
In a sense, it is not a strategy that is dissimilar to what a homelessness outreach worker might do.
Sure.
To start to build trust with someone who's living on the street, to let them know that they could be trusted to provide you with food or clothing or something while you're still out there, with the hope of building trust. And at some point, maybe you will take it a step further and rely on me to bring you to safety, to bring you to help, to get you into treatment, to take you off the streets. It's literally the same strategy a social worker might use.
100%.
Because in this very cruel world that you were in, this was a person who was showing you kindness.
Right.
And I imagine they were very convincing.
100%, right? It went from, this is a stranger to me, to this beliefs of, this person cares about me, they're helping me, they're providing for me with nothing in exchange. They're not like other men who abused me or used me or made me do things, for them to help me. So I started seeing this person in a light of this person truly wants to help me and they care about me. And when I started to kind of experience that, I did build a level of trust where I looked forward to hoping that individual was the next car to drive down the street, because I thought that they wanted to help me.
I'm imagining at some point in the relationship with this trafficker, there was a shift.
There was, and again, it happened over time where from you can have money or the meal or the clean clothing for nothing to him kind of introducing me to what I describe like an underground world of what they would call agencies, right? In the sense that they were really prostitution rings. So him bringing me into, I can do these things for you, but I need you to start, working with this agency to exchange sexual favors with other men. So it didn't move from him trying to coerce me to do things with him. It was him thinking he was helping me to get money if I did X, Y, and Z with other men. What I didn't realize was happening is that was my kind of introduction into an underground prostitution ring, i.e. trafficking. I again looked at him as he's helping me to, feed my habit to earn money. And he still wasn't at that point expecting me to do anything with him in return. It was kind of a gradual system in which I eventually, succumbed to the things that he wanted me to do with him or for him.
I imagine when that's going on, there's a version of it in your mind where you could almost believe, hey, this is a good thing he's doing for me.
Right.
He's educating me on how this works and the safest way is to do this. And perhaps if I participate in this agency, I maybe will get things in return, like protection and belonging to something of a community of other women who are doing the same things.
Yeah.
Were there other women that you met who were also part of the agency?
There were, and again, when I kind of reflect back on this now versus when I was actually, living that lifestyle, these were things that I was unaware were happening, right? So there were women that were like me that were kind of brought into this underground prostitution ring who would go on what they would call dates with men, right? There were also women that were like the women that were also grooming you of how to act, what to do, what not to do. Women that kind of became managers of women like me that were involved in trafficking. These women kind of took this like big sister mom approach in terms of they oversaw the smaller ring of women like me that they were kind of coaching in terms of this is me showing you the ropes of how this world works.
Again, another sort of false nurturing experience.
Right.
In which the real skill behind these ringleaders was really to convince the human trafficking victims that we are the people that love you and will take care of you out in this world.
Exactly.
And your participation is what makes this safe and what makes all of this work.
Exactly.
Or you can go out there on your own and suffer the consequences of that with no protection.
Exactly. Right. The kind of like if you're doing this with us versus on your own, we'll give you the place to live. We'll buy you clean clothes. We'll feed you. We'll pay for things for you. We'll protect you from other people on the streets. So in my mind, it was, I need them in order to survive the streets of Kensington, Philadelphia.
At what point did you realize that these people were not your friends?
So it took a long time for me to realize that they were not my friends. They were not helping me. Where it started was one time when I kept the money that I had made. I think I had like stopped at a convenience store to buy myself like a snack, right? I was starving. And when I came back with, here's the money that I owed the traffickers, and they questioned that it wasn't all there. I had told them, I stopped and bought something at the store because I was hungry. And I remember their reaction of, you're not allowed to do that. Like we own you, right? That you're not allowed to go and buy yourself something to eat. That's our money. So it went from me thinking the money I was earning was for me to keep versus I now was in debt to this person, that if I didn't give that to them, things would happen, whether it was physical abuse, sexual abuse, or, these threats of if you do this again, essentially, you're in trouble.
So essentially, one day the time arrives
Right.
that they're letting you know you don't even get to feed yourself.
Right.
Unless we say so.
Exactly.
And then the wheels start turning and you realize these people are not my friends.
Right.
They believe that they own me.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I do, all the money that I earn, they consider me to be their property.
Exactly.
That must have been horrifying.
It was. And when I think back to what that was like then, I almost go to having difficulty connecting with how horrifying that was, because it seems like that's the story of someone else. But it was horrifying. It was scary. It made me believe these people own me and don't dare try to tell anybody about what's going on here, because we will go after you. We will go after your family. So it was almost like I am trapped in this. And I'm not allowed to get out. There's no help for me to get out of this situation.
So I want to say a little something about that. KYW News Radio in the Philadelphia area recently reported that there were 300 filed cases of human trafficking in Pennsylvania between 2018 and 2022. 6% of those in Philadelphia County. So this Kensington and Allegheny area, it contributed to about 18 people.
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania Senator Christine Tartaglione reports this is happening for real. It's happening in my district. It's happening in Kensington. It's happening in Allegheny. So this is recent. So
Right.
This is still going on. It's still being talked about. It's still a big problem, although they're also reporting that the numbers are down from what they were.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a big problem. So when you think about that, between 2018 and 2022, there were approximately 18 reported cases in the same area that you were operating in.
Right.
I have to imagine that is a gross underestimate of how big the problem really is, and that the vast majority of these cases, the overwhelming majority of these situations, go unreported.
They do. It's such a gross underrepresentation of the amount of victims that are actually out there. And in my experience, right, and I'm curious if those 18 people, those 18 reported cases had the same experience. Usually they're reported because one of the victims is also engaging in illegal activity and they get caught, which kind of uncovers to law enforcement their involvement in prostitution rings or their involvement with traffickers. So it probably the thousands of women that are out there in comparison to the cases that are then reported or discovered by law enforcement, it is such a vast difference.
What an incredible double bind.
Right.
Because you're trapped.
Yeah.
Essentially, in order to get law enforcement help, you have to confess to crimes.
Exactly.
I have to imagine the fear of getting in trouble is a huge deterrent
Mm-hmm.
to the women that are out there living this. And then, of course, there's the other fear, which is the retribution and ire
Mm-hmm.
of these criminal trafficking organizations,
Right.
who I have to imagine are just merciless.
That was my experience where I knew, I was convinced I can't go to law enforcement to help me, because part of me getting help then meant that I was going to be locked up. The fear of, will they believe me? Right? Because I would have been viewed as a drug abuser, as a prostitute, right? Would they believe me, or would they tell me, you put yourself in these situations? In terms of the fear of retaliation, right? It was so real in the sense that these traffickers quite literally would remind me, we know who your family is, we know where they live, we have their phone numbers. If you try to get out, right, or if you get arrested and you mention us, we essentially will hurt you, will kill you, we will go after your family. So the fear of retaliation was so great that it fed into me staying or believing that there was no way out.
That sounds terrifying and so daunting for one individual person who is suffering drug addiction and trapped into these web of very dangerous people.
Yeah.
Of how can I possibly get out of this? And if I pursue any of the legal routes that are available to me, in all likelihood, they're not going to believe me. I may have charges pressed against me. And then I have these other people coming after me and my family. I can imagine that would just really scare most people off, as you said.
For sure.
But somehow or other, you got out of it.
Mm-hmm.
There was a law enforcement officer that you built a relationship with. And then, of course, there was the actions and advocacy of your family.
Right.
Your mom in particular.
Yeah. So my mom had put out a missing persons report for me over the 5 years that I was on the streets in Kensington. And I actually remember one day when I was walking on the streets, a police officer stopped me and had me get in the back of their car. They didn't handcuff me, which confused me. I thought I was going to be arrested. They had me get into the back of their car and brought me down to the station and said, "Do you know that you were reported missing?" So I guess unbeknownst to me, right, my mom had reported me missing, and they had been looking for me. What I thought maybe was for a couple weeks or months. They had been looking for me for years. My family was probably contacting every hospital, every jail, anybody that they could in terms of finding me. And when they brought me into the station and said, "You were reported missing," this is going to sound crazy for me to say out loud. At the time, I was angry. I was angry that my mom had reported me missing. That officer wanted me to get on the phone with my family so that my family could hear my voice and know that I was alive. They couldn't keep me because I was over the age of 18. So I think their efforts in bringing me into that station that day was in hopes that if I had gotten on the phone with my family, I would have let them come and pick me up. I would have gotten myself into treatment. But I was scared to do that because I had the voices of my abusers telling me, if you tell your family or the police what's happening, we will not only come after you, but we will go after them. So the police had to let me go that day. My mom didn't stop trying to find me. Right. So her filing that missing persons report for me eventually led up to the police probably years later then finding me. But they found me because there were warrants out for my arrest. So me being arrested is kind of what launched me into then getting myself help through the help of other people.
So it was really a variety of kind of happenstances.
Right.
That sort of had to take place to set the stage where your family's efforts combined with these specialized law enforcement officers that were particularly out there in that area and looking to intervene with women like you. It's sort of like the stars had to align perfectly in order for you to have the opportunity that you had. And then, of course, there was this moment of willingness that you had where you finally were willing to surrender and give into this and allow these people to help you.
Yeah. And that day, I will never forget. It was the daytime, and I remember it was raining this day, and I was walking down the street, probably on my way to get drugs. And the warrant unit in Philadelphia drives unmarked cars. Most people wouldn't know it's a warrant unit car coming down the street. I was very familiar with what those undercover cars looked like. So as soon as they drove past me, I knew it was the warrant unit officers. As we shared in the audio recording with the interview I did with the FBI, I had a split moment where I thought about running and I didn't. So whatever made me not run partially was probably fear of they're going to find me anyway, but also out of this desperation of I can get, this is my ticket out of this, being trapped in this lifestyle. That officer that arrested me that day, ended up being Detective Bill Johnson, who I didn't realize at the time was also kind of undercover with the task force to specifically help women that were involved in trafficking get out. I thought he was just a warrant unit officer, that wanted to have me arrested for the warrants that I had been facing for years. So when I say he saved me, it's because he did his due diligence of being a member of the task force and never stopped looking for me. He never gave up on that.
It's incredible because what I'm thinking as you're saying this, and it's going to be hard to articulate, is that you literally had this guy from the task force whose job is to pull women out of the life, off the streets, and get them into help.
Mm-hmm.
And he has to kind of disguise that those are his true intentions. So instead, his identity on the streets is a warrant enforcement officer,
mm-hmm.
because in a way, a warrant enforcement officer, like the person who's pulling you off the streets and putting you in jail for these warrants, is actually seen as safer than the guy who's trying to pull you out of the life and save you.
Exactly.
Which is incredible to me.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? I'm going to go with the guy who wants to put me in jail. Like, that seems like a normal transaction for where I'm at in life. That he's part of this other organization that's actually trying to remove these girls from this lifestyle, that I would run from like it was the plague.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's incredible to think about, that he would actually be more approachable as the person who was trying to put you in jail.
Right. That's what I thought it was, of they're getting me and I'm going to go to jail. And the idea of being locked up was more appealing and safer than, if I run from this officer right now, that means I'm going back to trafficking. So jail seemed safer than what I was in, unbeknownst to me, right? And after I was arrested was then when I slowly realized that there are greater efforts in trying to help me get out of the world of trafficking.
At what point did it occur to you that you now had a legit opportunity to get out of all of this, that there was something else available to you?
So that day when I was arrested by the warrant unit and I went to jail in Philadelphia, I was in there probably for 3 to 4 months, awaiting sentencing, right, for a list of criminal behaviors that I was involved in, through my addiction and through being on the streets. And when I was in there, I remember I had video court hearings with a judge and my sentencing kept getting pushed back.
So at this point, they're continuing to push your court case back, and you don't know anything about this. It probably just seemed like it was some administrative stuff going on.
Yeah.
But behind the scenes, your mom is working with the judge and the law enforcement. Probably there was a lawyer involved.
Mm-hmm.
And they were trying to set something up for you.
They were, and I was the last to know. I assumed my court hearings just kept getting pushed back and that eventually I would be told, like, here's how long, up to a year or longer, that you're going to be locked up for crimes that I had committed, right? But unbeknownst to me, it was really they were trying to look at how to get me out of jail and into an actual treatment facility because it was evident to them that I needed help with something that was greater than me.
I have to imagine they were worried that if you knew what was going on or what they were trying to do, that there was probably a fear of you becoming like a flight risk or trying to get out of it somehow.
For sure, that I probably wouldn't go. And Eric, I remember the day that I was released to then be court ordered to go to treatment, they were worried that I was a flight risk. So I had officers that escorted me onto the airplane and officers that met me when I arrived to Florida. That's inevitably where I went to go to treatment, that were waiting for me when I got off the plane because in their eyes, I was such a flight risk to just, evade every effort to get me into treatment.
It's amazing. You got like the El Chapo transportation.
Exactly.
People meeting you on both sides.
Yeah.
So you finally get to Florida, you get admitted to treatment. You realize that there's this massive effort that had taken place
mm-hmm.
through the legal system, from your family,
Right.
through law enforcement, all these people cooperating to try to get you help. You make it into treatment. At this point, are you assimilating the idea that this is my opportunity to get help, to get out of all of this stuff? Or did it take a while for you to realize what an opportunity this was and what could potentially happen for you by going to treatment?
Yeah, it took me months into what ended up being a very long-term treatment center for me to actually, I think, understand that there was this thing, called recovery, that I could live a life sober. I didn't think I necessarily bought into the idea that like treatment could help me get and stay sober. So when I went in there, it was more because I had no other options outside of going back to jail. But I definitely did not believe that treatment could help me until a few months into doing some significant work, right, around trauma, around mental health issues that I was definitely in denial, impacted me. And really working with a therapist and a care team and being introduced to AA and a sponsor, where I was like, maybe this can work. Maybe my life can be different.
Yeah, it sounds like it really took a while to take you out of that mindset and get you into a hopeful place,
right,
where you could really buy into what was happening and the opportunity that was in front of you.
Yeah, it was almost like treatment was such a different environment, right? I was with people that actually wanted to help me, but I came from an environment on the streets and having, been with traffickers, that it was a big like culture shock to me.
Well, there's something interesting that I'm thinking as you're talking, that when you first met the traffickers, they were also very nice and appeared to be caring people,
right,
who were looking out for you.
Yeah.
And in the end, they turned out to be whatever the opposite of that was. And so here you're in this treatment environment, and you also have a lot of people gathering around you, taking an interest in you, wanting to help you. I have to imagine, having experienced the things you'd experienced, it must have been very difficult for you to trust these people.
It certainly was. I prevented myself from really opening up for a couple months into treatment. One, because I had this mindset of, why do these people want to help me? They know nothing about me. Nor did I think they understood the depths of what I had experienced. A lot of people that I was in treatment with had very different stories than I did. So when I went in there very guarded in terms of like, nobody understands what I've been through. But there was also a level of the denial system I had around what I had been through. But I was not open to trusting people that wanted to help me.
It's fascinating the way denial works. Because it almost contradicts itself. On one hand, it's, my situation is so bad, these other people here couldn't possibly grasp the depth of what I was in. On the other hand, it's, I wasn't really doing that bad.
Right.
And when you think about the contradiction of that, it's the power of the mind to really organize one's reality in any way that's necessary to support the addiction itself, because that's what it all comes back down to.
Exactly.
Right? Is what is the thinking that will justify me leaving all of this and continuing to use.
Right.
But somehow or other, you battled through all that stuff and got to the other side. What do you think was the most impactful thing for you? What do you think it was that really turned you around?
When I look back at my treatment experience, where undeniably the therapeutic aspects of being in a treatment center helped me, for me, it was more the connections that I made with other people that were in recovery, right? So when I got introduced to the rooms of AA, and I got a sponsor who took me months to trust her or believe that she had my best interest at heart, but it was really me having exposure to people that were like-minded to me, to realize maybe I'm not unique, right? Maybe I'm not alone in all of the shame and the traumas and fill in the blank, the things that I had been through, where that community of people is what I think was my buy-in. It felt safe. I felt they understood me. Whereas the therapy helped, but it also scared me, right? It scared me having to look at some things that I had buried deep down inside for years prior to going to treatment.
So ultimately, all of these relationships that you created,
Mm-hmm.
the therapeutic, the professional people, the therapists, and then all of the people from the recovering community
Mm-hmm.
that embraced you, cared about you, made you feel like you belonged.
Yeah,
And they didn't want anything from you.
exactly.
They just wanted to help you.
Yeah.
And over time, you came to trust these people and believe that they were genuinely your friends. And somehow or other, you turned it around.
Yeah.
And not only did you turn it around and become a successfully sober person, right?
Mhm.
One day at a time,
Yeah.
but for a good 10 years now.
Right.
But you also eventually made a commitment to working in the field to
Mhm.
help other people.
Yeah. When I was in treatment, if anybody then had told me that someday I would then be working in that field as a professional, I would have laughed in their face, right? Because there was a long time in treatment where I thought, okay, maybe I can get sober, but I couldn't see a life beyond, the walls of treatment for myself. So having my personal experience and being in treatment really inspired me to then want to give back and help other people professionally.
When did you make that choice?
So when I had probably about a year and a half sober, and part of my past actually came up in my sobriety, where I was basically faced with having to confront a trafficker well after I had escaped that lifestyle. When I was kind of going through that in sobriety, but having to face parts of my past that were now haunting this life I was trying to build for myself, was kind of the same year that I realized, A, I'm sober, and B, I'm being confronted with things from my past that almost inspired me to kind of realize, like, I want to be in the field of helping other people. It was almost 2 years into sobriety that I kind of had that realization of how grateful I was to be in a position where I was alive and sober and maybe could make a career out of getting into the field of, the treatment industry.
At what point did you realize, hey, I'm pretty good at this and I want to go forward with it? I want to become a licensed therapist someday. I want to really turn this into my vocation. I think I have a gift here and something to offer to other people.
Yeah.
And I'm going to commit to it, because you already entered into this having the master's degree in criminology.
Right.
And you ended up having to go back to school again
Mm-hmm.
for another master's degree.
Yeah.
To get the social work degree that you have now.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of commitment.
A lot of commitment. It was when I first started working in the treatment industry, it was as a counselor assistant, right? Because I didn't have the credentials to be a therapist at the time. So I think that was my first step into, I understand what it's like to go through treatment. I understand, what it's like to not trust other people to help you. And when I was a counselor assistant, I realized I want to help individuals in treatment. It was probably like a year or 2 years into that where I realized the professional part of helping others can go beyond that. And I took an interest in wanting to be able to explore a role as a therapist, also remembering how much my therapist when I was in treatment helped me when I didn't think I could be helped. So kind of wanting to be able to help somebody else achieve something that they might also feel like they couldn't do.
At what point did you realize that you were pretty good at this thing? Or do you not know that?
I honestly, I don't know the answer to that if I really think about that. Because when I first got into the professional, field of addiction and mental health treatment, there was definitely still parts of me that felt like an amateur, right? Of like remembering the lifestyle that I had been living and almost like that shame-based belief that came back up of you're not qualified to help people because of how bad your past was. So it was kind of like I wanted to professionally embark on getting myself into the field to help other people, but also felt like, who am I to be in a position where maybe professionally I can help other people?
So despite your incredible story of recovery and that journey and the fact that people were welcoming you, wanting to employ you and wanting to give you these opportunities, there was still this like tremendous imposter syndrome.
For sure.
That was limiting you in terms of your belief about what was going to be possible.
For sure. I felt like an amateur. And then it was parts of me that realized I do have a past, right? And I do have a record. And would an employer not accept me because of those things that are very much so on paper?
I met you back in 2017. We were working in the same place. And we worked together. We sat in groups together. I'd seen you interact with clients and all that. It was pretty obvious that you belonged there to me.
Thank you for saying that.
And to everyone else. I mean, you're well respected for the counselor assistant role that you had. When there were therapists that went on vacation and things like this, you would come in and cover the groups and really served in the function of the primary therapist.
Right.
And you were respected by the clients. They took you seriously and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's learning from people that helped me, right, get sober. I think was something that was a lot for me to wrap my head around, where I had an opportunity professionally, but I was sitting at a table with the same people that had helped me get to where I was that day.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It had to be kind of a cool experience to be among the people that helped you.
Yeah.
And to say to yourself, I'm on this side of it, and these people who helped me are actually my peers now.
Yeah, that took me a long time to remind myself, like, wait, this is actually really happening. So to be equals with people that I gotten help from was this experience. It's actually like hard to put into words, right? Of what that signified to me probably was like, I made it out and look at where people have helped me to get to my life today, which kind of built this inspiration that I had of, I made it to the other side of the table, right, in that equation, and really having a desire to help people in treatment realize like they could have that same opportunity to change their lives around, even when they wouldn't believe that was a possibility. Because I was living, breathing proof of that's possible.
And here you are, 10 years later, you actually supervise therapists in a treatment environment.
So being a part of treatment center that 10 years ago helped me, again, is one of those things where I'm like, that really happened, right? I never would have believed back then that was an opportunity for me today.
Incredible. All these experiences that you had and the path that it took for you to get to this place of sobriety and wellness where you're living this, what appears to be a pretty amazing life.
Mm-hmm.
How does it influence the way you practice? How does it influence the way you form therapeutic relationships with the clients that you treat?
Yeah, so my personal experience really drives me professionally in terms of, one, wanting to be an advocate, right, in terms of people that are still out there struggling or suffering, or family members who are impacted, by addiction, by mental health, by, trafficking or traumas. In first and foremost, being an advocate for people that otherwise can't advocate for themselves. It inspires me to really focus on building that framework that starts with trust and safety in a therapeutic relationship, because I struggled so much in the beginning when I was a patient in treatment to believe I can really be safe with and trust this individual that claims they're trying to help me. So a lot of my having worked with clients is really not missing an opportunity to look at how important it is to just establish a safe and trusting relationship so that we can get to the level of the actual work starting to be done. It inspires me professionally in terms of wanting to have patients know and understand that their past, right, and their shame is not who they are, which you can tell somebody all day, like, you are not your past. And we understand that it's hard for somebody to believe that when they have cultivated such a shame-based lens of who they are, right, and how the world views them.
That's amazing. And I imagine coming from you, it's probably very believable to the people that you're trying to help, because even watching you now say those things, there is an undeniable conviction that perhaps I might have difficulty believing what you're saying, but what is undeniable is that you believe it.
Exactly. Yeah, that it's possible, right? So as a professional, working with somebody in where they're at, meeting a client where they're at, it is important to me, because what I've learned is that it can be invalidating to somebody who views themselves under a shame-based lens to tell them, like, but don't worry, you're going to make it out okay, right? Your life will get better. It was hard for me to believe my life would get better until I realized that it was getting better.
So when someone comes along and they give you the cheerleader rah-rah of, you're going to be fine, kid.
Right.
Follow this path and listen to the therapists and everything's going to be okay. That actually is invalidating, perhaps even condescending in a way.
Right.
Because it undermines this horrific experience you had. And the fact that anyone who experienced what you had experienced would naturally come into a process like this with a tremendous amount of skepticism.
For sure. Yeah. So not trying to like rush somebody into work that they're not ready to do, and really understanding the importance of making therapy a safe space to be able to invite someone to explore really scary parts of their past.
So what your experiences have taught you as a therapist is to be very patient with the process.
Right.
And how to properly gauge a person's sense of safety and readiness to embark on heavier levels of work.
For sure.
And not everybody, even seasoned and well-trained people, can necessarily calibrate that accurately. But you probably could in a way that's difficult for other people because of your experiences and what you're actually bringing into the therapeutic process.
Yeah. And that's something that's important to me. In me not having an agenda for the work that I think a patient needs to do, but really, really listening to them and trying to get a level of understanding of what somebody's life has been like for them, right? Like letting them kind of guide where they want to go in therapy, and just being a person who can be there to listen and meet them where they're at with an experience.
It's amazing to me that you are so patient and in your heart and mind really gentle with people in that way. Creating safety, caring about those things. People engage therapeutically when they're ready. And I experienced you working together as someone who was like tough but fair. Like you were not... You could see that you were a tough individual with like a strong will when it came to dealing with people. But it was never like the gratuitous type of confrontation where there's an abuse of power or this ego-driven need to be the person that's right in the situation. It was just that you were, I would say, a person with a lot of conviction. And when I saw you operating the way that you did, it was instantaneously respectable to me.
Thank you.
And I remember seeing you work and working with you and getting to know you and having a very high regard for you.
Thank you.
And it's interesting, like what you don't know about people, because I had no idea about this entire experience that you had with the human trafficking, and really only stumbled upon it because you wrote something on LinkedIn on National Human Trafficking Awareness Day, which is January 11th, in case anyone wants to know.
Yeah.
That you had posted something about that was your experience. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What did you do? What?
Yeah.
It's incredible how far you've come and all of the things that you're doing and what your life is like now and what you're really contributing to the world. I think that your story reads like a Hollywood movie with a real Hollywood ending.
Yeah.
My hope for you would be that someone would hear this and want to approach you with like an opportunity to make a movie script. I think it's really that kind of story. I think it's a story that our world really needs more of right now, as people sometimes lose hope in the opioid epidemic with the amount of overdoses and casualties and the seemingly unstemmable flow of fentanyl into this country, and all of the casualties and tragedies that result from that.
Yeah.
But I want to say I appreciate you so much coming out here today and being willing to share your story with me and whoever else would be fortunate enough to listen in on this. It really is quite a thing and quite an honor that you'd be willing to share on such a personal level about all of these things. Again, I think that you're just in your prime of what you're going to be capable of in considering like the potential reach that you have and how you can help people. So it's really cool to be able to tell this story to people.
No, and I appreciate the opportunity just, to share it and to share it with you and people that are out there, listening to this. Breaking that silence for me is important because there are so many people that are still living that lifestyle, right, of addiction, faced with mental health issues or, stuck in the human trafficking system that still exists, that I would feel remiss not to be able to have my voice today and share that there is help. Your life can get better, whether or not you believe that, right? But to not have shame in talking about what my life was like then and where, my life has grown to today. And to remind people that even when you get sober, right, even when I got sober, there were parts of my past that still popped up and haunted me that were very difficult to get through, but I was able to maintain my sobriety in terms of quite literally facing a trafficker, right? That thank God I was alive and sober to be able to testify against in my early sobriety.
Oh, wow. We didn't even get to that you had to, I'm assuming, go back to Pennsylvania and testify against this guy.
Right. So it's like reminding, it was a reminder to me that I here I am. I think I was like almost 2 years sober, where I had been so far, in my eyes, removed from a lifestyle that I was living for years. And my abuser kind of found me in my sobriety to lure me back into that lifestyle. And it was not something at the time that I was prepared for. So I did travel back to Pennsylvania to testify against my trafficker because he had gotten caught doing this to other women. And the same people that got me out of that lifestyle, who didn't know, where I was in my life, had contacted me to let me know, they had caught him and that he was going to be convicted for things that he had done to myself and to other women. So to be able to be sober and really show up to have a voice for what this person had done to me was terrifying, but also an opportunity of it was okay for me to break the silence in terms of what this person had done.
Incredible. Just the obstacles and the things you had to overcome to get to where you are.
Yeah. Thank you.
Really, it's a pretty inspiring story, like I said. Any final thoughts?
Just in terms of, my hope in this outreaching, to individuals that are still out there or professionals that are trying to help people through things like addiction, mental health issues, and trauma. is to not be silent, right, around things like this that still exist in our world today, to really look at how we can continue to improve the industry that we both work in, to outreach to people, that don't believe that there's help out there.
Yeah, that's a really good message, and one that people need to hear. And again, I think your inspiring story will give people a glimpse, a real life living example of what is possible, and that under the right circumstances, it is possible for a person to leave that life.
100%.
Well, again, Allie, thank you so much for coming and joining me today and being willing to share this story with myself and anyone who's fortunate enough to listen to it. Pretty incredible stuff.
Thank you so much, Eric.